Hello! I like to talk about why dyspraxic and autistic traits can make somebody come across as being really rude, and it can be that the person is highly considerate and emotionally aware, and yet incapable of being polite in the way that is expected in social situations. This is something that's plagued me throughout my whole life, ever since I was really little. And I'll start with something I've already touched on about not being able to notice my voice, how it's coming out, because I'm saying I'm going to say something literally, and to me that's it. Like, I'm just going to say what I mean, but I'm not able to put it in a certain intonation or a certain tone to make it sound like it should. So an example, I was just thinking, when I was in high school, and I was really nonverbal at that point, so I wasn't talking a lot, but I wanted to be able to connect with people. And we were in a science lesson. It was a kind of lesson where we were like standing around these benches where you do your science work, and then there was like connected to our bench, like a standing bench, there were some boys working at that table, and there was a boy that I was interested in talking to. So as we were doing our experiment, and people were allowed to chat at the same time, and I said, kind of spoke across to him, how's your table tennis going, David? I managed to get that out of my mouth, so that's quite a lot for me, because I wasn't really able to get much sentences to that length. And then everybody went silent, and then David went like completely red, and it was like, you could see, you can see when someone feels embarrassed and they just get that crushed effect, and they're just kind of like, they just do that like horrible, awful melt thing. That's the last thing I'd ever want to inflict on anybody, because to me it's really, really highly important to let everybody else feel comfortable. That's the way that I was raised, and it's like part of my childhood experiences and part of my personality. So it all happened so quickly because I process things very slowly. So to me this was like really, really, really fast, that I'd said, oh, how was your table tennis going? So this was quite a risk I took to ask him. And then he did this crushed thing, and then the teacher sort of like padded over and just went, well, that wasn't very kind of you, to me. And then I was just left feeling like, what have I done? I was actually just literally trying to start a conversation with him, but apparently I'm guessing I must have sounded as if I was poking fun at him for being a table tennis player and for doing that as his hobby, as if the way that I'd said it somehow was like trying to say, there's like all these hidden meanings between the lines. Well, between the line, can you say between the lines? There's only one line. So it's awful, because like I said, my intention was just to start a conversation, and maybe make a friend. It's really difficult. And then I want to talk about the example about the question of how are you, and this really hit home for me, sort of like when I got to a point in life when I was old enough to start travelling, which was like probably early teens or during my teenage years, travelling to different countries. And then I noticed that people were being taught, when they were learning English, they were being taught this, like, can't remember which country I was in, how are you? I am fine. That's it. So then they wanted to practice, like, how are you? And then I'm supposed to say, I am fine. And this is the case in a lot of Asian countries where they're studying English and they're just taught this, like, how are you? I am fine, that's the answer. And it's actually just like how I was taught in French, I think, because when we learnt French at high school, it was like, ça va? Oui, ça va. There's no like other answer. So like for a lot of us, like dyspraxics and autistics, we can't answer this thing about how are you. When I was little, I could never answer like how are you, because I didn't know how to sort of I didn't know like the social construct of that idea in the first place. Because nobody had told me, and I don't notice things unless they're actually told to me. So I didn't pick up that like if someone says, how are you? You're supposed to say, okay, or I am fine. I didn't know that in the first place. Then add in the fact that I couldn't access my thoughts to be able to say something. And then the verbal dyspraxia, it was like even if I'd wanted to say for example, I'm okay, how are you? I wouldn't be able to get that in my mouth and get it out of my mouth. There was a big disconnect with like what I would be able to get my mouth around. It's like sort of like blah. It's like if I tried to say something, it'd just be like ugh. That used to happen if someone asked me my name and I had to answer it. It was like ugh, and then they couldn't hear it and understand it, and then yeah, that's the part of the verbal dyspraxia. So then, but what I found out later in life, like meeting a lot of other people with, oh yeah, so then the literal thing is like, to me, all the communication and talking that ever happens, there's always like an actual factual, there's an answer, like a real truthful answer. Okay, so it's like, I can't do like, I've never been able to do like, what's that thing called? Banter. Or just basically like joking with somebody. I can't, because if someone answers me and it's not actually the literal true answer, I'm just like stumped. And then after a few seconds or a minute, I'll be like, ha ha ha. I have to kind of like suddenly act like I can do this, like, oh, you're joking, ha ha ha. And it's really embarrassing because I think you're supposed to say, well, you are supposed to say something back in that situation, and I can't, because I just can't work at that level. I can only work on like the genuine level of like the actual answer of what is true for me, my understanding of the world. And then, yeah, so then what I was going to say was, later in life, when I eventually started meeting loads of people like me who were like dyspraxic, autistic, and various neurotypes, but not the typical, we all have the same problem with the question, how are you? It's very, very, it's a daily struggle for us because of this, well, all the reasons I've just said. I mean, you know what I mean? So it doesn't, not all those reasons apply to everybody, but the thing about being literal. And I just want to give an example of like when this happened. Like, so when I was, a few years ago, my disabilities had like really got quite unmanageable for me. I tried to like go back to work, and then I'd kept being asked to do more shifts. Will you just do this? Will you come in? Will you do 9 to 5? Will you just do 2 more weeks? And then this job that I'd taken on, which was supposed to be just 2 hours a day, and I was thinking I'll manage everything with my, you know, pain level and my disabilities around that, and I'll be able to do it. But then all of a sudden I was just in like 9 to 5, 5 days a week, and I got really, really ill, and I had to quit the job because I was in a really bad condition. And I had, yeah, so that was that. And then like a couple of months later, I wasn't that recovered, and there was a wedding, and I was invited with, yeah. I was going to say with my children. I had to take my, not that I had to, but my daughter was with me, but she wasn't, the children weren't invited to the wedding. So basically I had to like get up, I wanted to go to the wedding, so I should say that. So of course I wanted to go to the wedding. This is somebody who's like very dear to me. And then it was a little bit of a distance, like a different part of the UK. So but whereas I was actually kind of becoming housebound at this point, that got a lot worse later, so that's another video. So I wanted to travel all the way, and my daughter was going to be with me, and I needed to like get up, get ready, put on my wedding outfit, you know, do something with my hair, wear some makeup, and get my daughter ready. And like with dyspraxia, like doing something like getting a train is really difficult. Like packing a bag to stay over somewhere, it takes, it's either just going to not have anything that you need in it, or it's going to take you like 3 weeks to get that bag ready just to go for one night. It's very like complex for us to like work those things out of like, what am I going to need and which bag does it need to be in. So I'd achieved all this, and then I'd got up at 5 and got on this train, and it was like 3 or 4 hours, and travelled, and I was in pain because, like I said, I was quite unwell, and got there, and then it was like 11, I arrived at the wedding, and I saw like some very close relatives of mine who I hadn't seen recently, and then they came up and gave me a big hug, and how are you? And I was like, I was doing the big hug back to them, and then I replied to the question, I haven't really been that well, I've been struggling. And their face was as if to say, you've just, my dad used to use this phrase, but I don't know if I can say it properly. It's like, you've just crawled out from under a lettuce leaf on my plate, or something like that. It's just like how, the reaction from them, from me answering the question, how are you, without just saying I'm fine, how are you? It was like, I've just kind of like ruined their day, but my struggle was so real. Like, how on earth in the world could I just say, fine, how are you? There's no way. It would be like the biggest lie ever told. So that's an intro to that topic, and thank you.